was scarred. I've read it before, but I was scarred for life.
Okay, so I'm right in saying that immediately after this, we're going to go into a review for the finale, right?
Yeah.
So, a wee bit of confession to make. I've not watched a minute of the TV show. So, the way that I thought we could do this, if it's okay with you guys, why should I watch it? Pitch it to me, sell it to me, and go full spoilers. Like, I don't care about spoilers. Batter in. I seen it was coming, and I seen the cat. I was like, oh, I seen it was an Invincible show announced, right? And I was like, cool. I like the comic. And then I was like, oh, it's animated. It's not live action. Oh, that's
you like the comic.
You like the comic. You like the show.
Yeah.
Well,
then watch the show.
The fact it was animated kind of was a bit of a bum. And then I seen the cast, and I was like, oh, I should probably watch this just for the cast. Like, I love the actors, and then it came out, and I was like, do you know what?
So then I assume okay. So. We'll probably just jump straight into it because I feel like the renewal thing was going to happen, and Kurtman and you put out a video about it on Twitter and stuff.
So here's the thing: there's no way they could have done this live action.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The amount of wanton destruction in this episode puts Man of Steel to a blushing shame.
I would you're familiar with the first, probably omnibus of this.
Yeah, I read the omnibus.
Yeah. It's this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
it is.
I actually, sorry to interrupt, but I actually started the omnibus. I've not read all of it. I fell away from it. I can't remember what point. I think I read about half of it. I had it digitally, actually. And I read about half of it.
Past the point where Omni-Man leaves the planet, then you're good.
Yeah, okay.
It's pretty much spot on with what happens there. Like it's
Yes, so the show does reorganize. So the biggest change in the show is in the comic, as I'm sure you know, Omni-Man kills the Guardians of the Globe, and no one knows he did it, and then everyone only finds out when he reveals that he's a big baddie to Mark, and then beats him up and flies off planet. Yeah. In the show, they draw it out through the season as much more of a mystery, where pretty quickly Cecil catches on that Omni-Man did it. Debbie, Mark's mom, has more of an arc where she discovers that he did it. She's also already a real estate agent, which she is not in the comic. She becomes a real estate agent later in the comic as kind of a redemption.
There's also
back together.
There's also some people as well who are alive at the end of the main comic that aren't alive at the end of the show.
Yes. Okay. So they reorganize some events. I think it actually flows better for a show. Yeah. But basically, the finale is that final conversation that Omni-Man has with Mark, except it is the fight that they have, which in the comic is just kind of your typical floating through the air Dragon Ball Z fight with some emotional undertones, becomes a horror show. It is Omni-Man trying to make a point to Mark by horrifically killing as many people. They basically have their battle in Chicago, essentially. And you've got Omni-Man throwing Mark into the street, and Mark craters his way down the street and throws cars and debris everywhere, which kills a bunch of people. A apartment building then starts to come down, and he's trying to hold it up and save a couple of people in it. Fails. Apartment building comes down. He's holding a dismembered arm. He's traumatized. Then Omni-Man blasts him down into the subway in Chicago and holds him on the tracks while a train is coming. And the train blasts. He just cuts through the train like a knife through butter. You see from his perspective, people hitting him and just exploding as they hit him.
Yeah. Nice.
It's horrible.
It's traumatizing. I was just flicking through the end of the comic there for the Thunderous, and you can tell that they definitely wanted because obviously Kurtman was heavily involved in the show, and they wanted to redo this bit, and they wanted to make it as impactful in an animated form, and they done it to perfection, basically.
Yeah.
And as Ian said, there's definitely shifts around. Like, what's it? Walter. Walter, who's the guy who I know is like kind of a side character, but like, there's some characters who survive and some who die. Like,
Donald.
Donald. That's his name. Not Walter. Donald. He survives at the end of the comic in the first omnibus, and Robot's still Robot at the end of the comic in the omnibus, volume 1. But there's some basically they change some plot stuff around, and as being said, flows a lot smoother. And overall, it probably actually outpaces the comic, which is a very tough thing.
Yeah,
because it's a very fast-paced comic for it to do.
Well, and that was kind of Kirkman's thing. Is I remember reading an interview, and he was excited to write the first season of the show because it's been almost 20 years since he wrote the beginning of Invincible, and so he's bringing his 20 years of writing experience to bear to improve the parts of the beginning of Invincible that he thinks he could have done better, which I think is great. Like that's really cool that he gets to do that. The Donald thing, I think we're going to see Donald again, because in the comic at one point, Donald turns his hand into guns, and we find out that Donald is like 98% robot. He's like a cyborg. So, and he seems pretty human in the show. So I think we might see Donald again.
Well, you obviously get Robot as well. Robot's still Robot, whereas in this, spoilers obviously, he basically takes the blood of Rex Blode, the asshole, and makes a clone of him, because Robot's actually a giant, deformed, super smart fetus creature inside of a containment cage that's keeping him alive, and then transfers his consciousness using the Muller twins' technology of cloning. Which, by the way,
was really well done.
Yeah, really well done. The idea of what it means to be who is the actual the idea that you can't distinguish yourself between yourself and the clone, because then that would lead to more problems later on down the line. And the fact they highlight that as well.
They touch on that later in the comic. They touch on that at a point where one of the Muller twins creates another clone of himself once his clone, or his whatever, is killed, and the Muller twin that makes a new clone, half of his face is like blistered and destroyed from an earlier fight. And so they know who the original is, and it totally messes with their kind of equilibrium, and they end up being like, this is why we do it the way we do it, because it's a problem if we know who the original is. Though here's my thought. So they have the same experience up to when they turn on the machine, right?
Yeah.
But wouldn't they remember which bed they laid the clone down in and which bed they laid down in?
Maybe not. Maybe that's the whole thing. It scrambles your neurons, because
maybe
they
was
make
the only thing I could think of is like, wouldn't you remember, like, I put the clone in the right bed and I laid down in the left bed.
Maybe there's like a weird swap change kind of bed situation where it's constantly rotating.
Maybe it's comic books and I just shouldn't think so damn hard about it.
Maybe you should. But no, Dan, it's definitely worth the watch.
Okay.
And it's all available to binge now.
Yeah.
And
that was the other reason I wasn't starting it, because I wanted to wait until it was finished.
It's great. And
also the soundtrack is super dope.
Oh, it's great. And also just the animation's great. Like, it definitely has its flaws. It could be stagnant. It's very stagnant sometimes, and it arguably the stagnation of sometimes of the way it looks actually works for its benefit, because it makes it even look more like a comic book.
It's kind of got the thing you have with a lot of like anime shows where the less impactful, kind of lower energy scenes are a little like a little more still, a little bit less dynamic, but the fight scene animations are fantastic. Especially in the finale.
Pulls no punches. Man,
literally.
You expect them to be like, they're not going to do this, and then they do it. Like, there's a bit where Mark saves a pilot, and he lands on Omni-Man's like, you really bothered to save him, and just obliterates his head.
That was bad. So,
and I was like,
You know how in the beginning of the comic, Omni-Man kills the Guardians of the Globe, and it's like a page long, and most of it's silhouetted anyways. It's like a single panel, and they're just dead.
Yeah.
The end of the first episode is that scene.
It's a whole 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, it's a 5 to 10 minute long fight scene, and it is the most violent up until further at the time, up until further episodes came out, it was the most violent animated superhero scene I had ever seen.
Yeah.
I'm into it.
It is like, and it is very interesting because it's imagine what happens if Superman basically the Justice League went up against Superman, and how each of them would try and use their powers,
and he'd be like, "Ha, ha."
Yeah.
Except, let's pretend kryptonite's not a thing.
Exactly.
Right.
Because I like the characterization of all the characters in the show, like from your Williams to your Adam Eves, even Rex Explodes is an asshole, but like endearing by the end. Like even there's like a lot of side characters, like Black Samson as well as another one, I believe. Is his name? I think so.
Amber can still go right to hell, but that's
Amber's not great. She's Mark's love interest for the first season. It's
potentially part of the second too, based on the finale.
Yeah, finale. Yeah. It's a weird thing because she is like, you know how like the stereotypical thing is like, oh, if you know why have you been running away? Like, you know how the thing we always think of where, you know, surely a superhero's boyfriend or girlfriend would notice if they were running away from stuff constantly. Yep. You know, run away and like disappearing right when they need. She brings it up. She knows that he's invincible, but still doesn't forgive him.
Well, she figures out he's invincible and doesn't say anything to him because she keeps expecting him to admit to it, and then
is like, angry when he doesn't show up to stuff, and when he is like, but it's very selfish.
Well, and the thing is, what I realized watching back through the episodes with a friend of mine is we don't really get any scenes where they're actually enjoying their relationship. We get one like nonverbal one in the college visit.
Yeah.
But we don't get any real interactions between them where you get the impression that she actually likes him. It's just a lot of her looking at like, it's a lot of her looking down her nose at him or like turning her back on him and doing a little pouty humph. And it's like, why would I give a shit about this relationship? They're not pleasant. Like, I have no investment in them keeping this relationship alive. Please break up so he can just get together with Eve.
Well, yeah. Him and Eve have a better chemistry in the first season than him and Amber. Honestly, Dan, worth a watch. It's like 43-minute episodes, so it's like a big show, like 10 episodes. So like it's good. And honestly, if you're listening to this and you haven't watched this show yet, what are you doing here? Go watch Invincible.
First of all, we're gonna have to put a time code in the YouTube video for spoilers. We'll just keep in mind we started talking about Invincible at about an hour 20.
120. Yeah, 120.
We'll see what that actually looks like in the final render.
Yeah. We'll just code mark it with spoilers because
no, you convinced me. I'll start it tonight.
I'm gonna miss having 2 superhero shows to watch every Friday.
Oh man, yeah, no Marvel for a wee while till June.
Not till Loki.
Yeah.
That's okay. I'll catch up on a lot of reading. I'll watch some movies.
That's all there.
There's stuff out there. So yeah, Invincible. Watch it. It's great. The finale was fantastic, and it ends with Mark on the moon talking to Alan the alien, going, "I guess I'll finish high school," which a lot of people predicted was going to be the ending scene.
Which is exactly how the last page in the omnibus and that kind of first arc ends.
Thank you for listening to Disassembled. You can find more news and reviews on BigGlasgowComicPage.com. And don't forget, you can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube as BGCP Comic Con. Make sure you also subscribe on your podcast provider of choice for new episodes every week.